Chapter 1. Secret Friends. When he went home to Athens, the great prince Theseus took me with him at first, but he later left me on the island of Naxos. Why did he leave me there? Everyone says that he was tired of me. But when we met, I was a princess of Crete and the most beautiful woman in the world. Was he really tired of me? Some people say that I killed myself when he left and went to Athens with my younger sister Phaedra. She was only a child at the time, but it was useful to me that people thought I was so angry or sad that I ended my life then. I am old now, 40 years old, and I want to tell everyone what really happened before it is too late. My story begins long before Theseus came to Crete. When I was a child, I lived in the palace of Knossos with my father, King Minos. He was not only the king of Crete, he was also the strongest king in the world. The other kings were afraid of him. To keep him happy, Aegeus, the king of Athens, and the kings of all the other cities had to send presents to him every year. One of the presents Aegeus had to send was 7 young men and 7 young women from Athens. They had to come to Crete every year and fight the bulls. All our people loved watching bullfights. When the boys and girls died in the bullfights, we gave their dead bodies to the Minotaur, the monster who lived in the labyrinth, and he ate them. I usually watched the bullfights with my father, but I never thought much about those young people from far away. They came every year, and they died every year, just like the flowers in the palace gardens. The priests told us that we must give the Minotaur young people's bodies to eat, so we gave him the dead bullfighters. People were afraid that one day the Minotaur would come out to kill people for food. So, if no bullfighters died in the bullfights for a long time, we sometimes sent one of them into the labyrinth when he or she was still alive. Of course, we didn't want to send Cretan children to the monster. The labyrinth was under the ground at the bottom of our palace. Sometimes we could hear the Minotaur inside it. He roared like an angry bull under our feet. It was a terrible noise. Sometimes little boys ran inside the great door of the labyrinth to show their friends how brave they were. Those who went in far enough never came out again because they always lost their way inside. One of my father's oldest friends, Daedalus, once told me that the Minotaur had the head of a bull but the body of a man. "How do you know?" I asked him.
"Because I was there when the monster was born, and I built the labyrinth to be his prison and his home,"
answered Daedalus.
"Your father and I put the Minotaur there many years ago."
"But why?" I asked. "Why not kill him if he's so dangerous?"
"This is a question that you must ask your mother,"
answered Daedalus.
"But don't worry, Princess. The Minotaur can never escape from the labyrinth. Only I know the way in and out, and your father, of course. It is good that most people are afraid of the Minotaur, but you must never be. The daughter of Minos should never be afraid."
I never asked my mother about the monster. Somehow, I knew that she would not like the question. Daedalus was a kind old man and a very good teacher. He started to teach Phaedra and me when we were very young. We knew much more than most other girls who never studied. Daedalus taught us so many things about the world outside the palace. He knew a lot about the stars and the seas and other countries far from Crete. One day, when I was about 11, 2 boys joined our classes with Daedalus. One was his son, Icarus, and the other was Immerse. Immerse was the son of the high priest at the temple of Dionysus, a very important man in Crete. Dionysus was one of our most important gods, the god of wild feelings. It was a wonderful day for me when Icarus and Immerse joined our classes. At last, I had some friends, not just a boring little sister to play with. I liked both the boys, but Immerse was always special. He was clever and funny. For 4 years, Icarus and Phaedra played together, while I was always with Immerse. Daedalus didn't worry because he saw that all his students were happy and we were still very young. But one day, Minos was passing the palace gardens when he saw me with Immerse. We were lying and talking together under the trees at the time. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father standing there. He watched us silently for a few moments, then he called my name.
Ariadne,
He said.
come here at once.
I left Immerse under the trees and went to my father.
Ariadne,
He said once I stood in front of him.
you are now 15 years old. When I die, you and your sister must look after Crete. You will need the help of strong husbands who are also princes. A prince can understand how to rule a kingdom, and his people will be your friends also.
He looked at Immerse under the trees.
Do you understand me?
He said. Yes, father, I answered. But of course, I didn't really understand. Not until the next morning, when Immerse and Icarus didn't come to class. They never came again. Daedalus told me that Immerse was working with his father in the temple. I didn't see him for weeks. My life became suddenly boring and lonely. Phaedra followed me everywhere, but I didn't want to be with her. In the end, I thought of a way to keep Phaedra busy and to see Immerse again. I told Phaedra that we had a new game. She had to take secret messages to Immerse. If anyone finds out, I told her, they'll give you to the Minotaur because these are very secret messages. Phaedra was a little afraid, but she agreed to play the game because it was so exciting. She could go anywhere in the palace because she was so small, but I couldn't easily leave the women's rooms. So she went to the temple of Dionysus and gave Immerse my messages. He gave messages to her to bring back to me. Once a week, Immerse and I met in the palace gardens. I knew a quiet place very near the door of the labyrinth where nobody liked to go. I often walked there in the evenings when it was cool. Nobody thought it was strange that my walks were sometimes longer than usual. Or that's what I thought. But I forgot my little sister. One day she followed me and watched Immerse and me together. She said nothing to me about it at the time, but she couldn't keep quiet for long. With a stick, she made her secret into a picture on the ground one morning.
Who's that?
Asked a friendly servant.
It's Ariadne and her secret friend, Immerse, in the garden near the door of the labyrinth,
Phaedra said, smiling. The servant went to speak to my father. The next morning, my father called me to his rooms. Chapter 2. Messages and Dreams. When I arrived, my father was looking out of the window. Without looking at me, he spoke.
Ariadne,
He said.
I am not only your father, but also the king. Do you know what that means?
Yes, father, I answered. It means that I must obey you.
Immerse left Crete yesterday evening.
He went on.
His father and I have agreed that he will never come back to Crete. If he ever tries to come back, not even the high priest of Dionysus can help him. Do you understand?
I said nothing.
Go back to your room
Minos said quietly.
and think about what it means to be a princess. You can't do everything that you want to do. Neither can I. Neither can anybody.
When I got back to my room, I locked the door. I took out all my secret messages from Immerse and I read them again. I remembered all our meetings in the gardens. We had so many plans for our life together. Now all our dreams and hopes were finished. I put all Immerse's messages together. Then, in the flame of the lamp that lit my room, I burnt them one by one and watched my bright dreams change into dark smoke. Some time later, I heard a knock on my door. It was Phaedra.
Ariadne! Sister! Come and play with me!
She called through the door. I told her to go away. In the evening, a servant knocked at my door with some food for me. I told her to go away too. Night came, but I couldn't sleep. Through the window, I saw the moon and the bright stars in the dark sky. Were they laughing at me? The princess who thought that she could do what she wanted? The little bird in the gold cage? In the morning, my mother knocked at my door.
Ariadne! Open this door at once!
She said. I had to open the door for her. She came into my room and looked at me sadly. Another servant with food came into my room after her.
You must eat, Ariadne,
said my mother. I ate some of the food to please her.
Today you can stay in your room,
she said.
But tomorrow there's a bullfight, and your father wants you to be there.
I said nothing. My mother tried again.
A handsome young prince called Theseus has come to the bullfights. He's fighting a very dangerous white bull tomorrow. Everyone says that it's going to be a great fight. I'm sure that you'll enjoy it. I'll send a servant to bring you to the bullfight tomorrow morning.
After she left, I locked my door again. But in the middle of the afternoon, someone pushed a piece of paper under it. Is that you, Phaedra? I said angrily. Because if it is, you can go away. But it was silent outside the door. I took the paper and opened it. At once, I recognized Immerse's writing. My heart stopped for a second, and I read the note quickly. It said,
I am waiting for you on the island of Naxos.
I opened the door, but there was nobody outside. How did Immerse send me this message? I looked out of the window into the gardens. Again, there was nobody. Then I remembered the words of a song that Phaedra often sang. Love will find a way. I laughed aloud. I burnt this latest note from Immerse too. I didn't want Phaedra to find it and give away my secrets again. I'll find the way to Naxos, and I'll come to you, Immerse, I said to myself. I had many maps of the sea around Crete, and I could find Naxos on one of them, I was sure. Suddenly my hopes, my plans and my dreams were real again. I spent the rest of the day with my maps. My mother was pleased. She thought that I was forgetting Immerse. The next morning there were crowds and crowds of people at the bullring when I arrived. Everyone wanted to watch Theseus's fight with the white bull. I made my way to the special seats where all the important people sat, high above the crowd. My father smiled when he saw me, and he waved at the crowd. Then he sat down, and the fight began. Theseus came into the bull ring and bowed to my father. My Innerus is taller and more handsome than this Theseus, I thought. I smiled as I thought about Innerus. My mother thought that I was smiling at Theseus, so she smiled too. How could my mother understand me so little? She thought that I was like a hungry child with a new tasty fruit in front of me. A child that would soon forget yesterday's apple. Then the white bull came in. It was big and very angry. Theseus danced very quickly and cleverly around the animal. He was never far from the bull's horns, but it couldn't catch him. In the end, it became very tired. At that moment, Theseus jumped up and over the bull's horns and killed it with his knife. Everyone shouted and roared. Theseus! Theseus! My father jumped up. He was just as excited as the ordinary people. The crowd stopped shouting when they saw my father on his feet. Theseus bowed to him.
Well done, Theseus,
said my father.
Because you have pleased me, I'll give you what you ask for. What will it be? 100 gold pieces?
Theseus looked up at my father.
I don't want gold, great king,
he answered.
Then what do you want?
Asked Minos, surprised.
Freedom,
said Theseus.
for me and for all those who have come with me from Athens. Freedom not to die in the labyrinth. We want to go home alive. I also ask for freedom in the future for young people from Athens to live long lives and never to meet the Minotaur.
Chapter 3. Escape Plans. My father was very angry with Theseus. None of the bullfighters ever asked for freedom. They all knew that they had to die in the labyrinth. The Minotaur had to eat, and my father could not break his promise to the gods.
Because you have asked this thing,
Minos said to Theseus,
you have made our gods angry. You must go to the Minotaur at once. You have until midday to say goodbye to your friends, and then my servants will take you to the labyrinth.
The crowds were silent. Theseus walked past the dead bull with his head high. He was going back to the cage under the bull ring where they kept all the bullfighters before they went to fight the bulls. Like everyone there, I was sorry that he had to die. Then suddenly, I thought of something. Theseus needed to leave Crete, and so did I. Perhaps we could help each other. He must know how to sail to Naxos. In my lessons, Daedalus often told me that the people of Athens, the Athenians, were very good sailors. How could I save him from the monster? Then I saw Daedalus. He was talking to my father. Of course! That was it! Daedalus knew how to get out of the labyrinth. On the way to the palace, I spoke to him. My father was watching us. There's a new flower that I want you to look at, I said loudly. I don't know its name. Can you come to the palace gardens and help me? Daedalus looked into my eyes. He knew that I wasn't really interested in the names of flowers. He winked at me.
I'll be happy to come with you, Princess,
he said. My father moved away to say something to my mother. In the gardens, Daedalus and I walked far away from all the servants.
What is it, Ariadne?
He asked quietly.
I know how sad you are about Innerus, but don't be angry with Phaedra. She tried to keep your secret, but she's too young.
I was surprised. Did you know about our meetings? I asked.
Of course I did.
Said Daedalus.
But Immerse is a good boy, and I saw how you felt about each other. I think that Minos is wrong to say that you must marry a prince. But who am I to argue with a king? In time, Immerse will forget you, and you'll forget him.
We'll never forget, I answered hotly. Immerse is waiting for me to join him on Naxos. Now Daedalus was surprised.
How do you know this?
He asked. I told him about the message.
Ah, that's why Immerse sent a letter to Icarus. It had a secret note inside it that he wanted my son to take to you.
Right. So Icarus was the messenger. That explains it. I told Daedalus about my plan to escape with Theseus. Daedalus was quiet for a few minutes. Then he spoke.
It's a good plan,
he said.
Theseus is a brave prince, and his life is important to the gods. I've seen this in the stars. I think that the gods want us to help him. He'll be in the labyrinth soon, and without someone to help him, the Minotaur will find him quickly. We must get him out soon. There's a secret passage into the labyrinth. If I tell you where it is, you can go and help Theseus. It's dangerous, but you must find him before the Minotaur does.
Don't worry about me, I answered. As you yourself said, the daughter of Minos should never be afraid. Daedalus smiled again.
Good girl,
he said.
Now, Theseus will need a good sword to use against the Minotaur. I'll get one now. But how will you both find your way back out of the labyrinth? I'm too old to run in there with you, and there isn't time to explain the plan of the labyrinth. You need to get back to the secret door at the end of the passage.
I thought quickly. I know, I said. I'll take some strong thread from our rooms. I'll tie one end of the thread to the door of the labyrinth as I go in, and I'll give the other end to Theseus when I find him. Then we'll only have to follow the thread to find our way back to the secret door. But will it work?
I think so,
answered Daedalus.
And we have no time now to make another plan. Go to your room, Ariadne, and put on some warm clothes. It's cold in the labyrinth where the sun never shines. Find some strong thread and meet me at the garden door as soon as you can. I'll try to send a message to Theseus, and then I'll come back with the sword. I'll also tell my friends to find a boat for you and Theseus to use later at the harbour. You'll need some food and something to drink, too. But remember, you mustn't run now. Walk in your usual way and don't look excited. There are servants everywhere who are always watching you. We must be very careful.
This time I winked at him. I walked slowly away from Daedalus to my rooms. He bowed to me and left by the garden door. It was difficult to do everything slowly and quietly, but I don't think that anybody saw anything unusual. A short time later we met again. I had a big ball of gold thread in the pocket of my cloak.
Hide this under your cloak,
said Daedalus. I took the sword from him and did as he said.
You must use the family door into your father's rooms,
Daedalus went on.
The passage that goes to the secret door into the labyrinth begins next to the king's bed. If you lift the carpet, you'll see a big stone door in the floor next to the bed. The stone isn't as heavy as it looks. Use the metal ring in the middle of it and lift it up. You'll see some stairs going down. Take this lamp with you, and go down the stairs.
Daedalus gave me a small lamp.
At the bottom of the stairs, take the key that you see on the wall in front of you. You can turn left or right. To enter the labyrinth, you must turn right and walk down a narrow passage. You'll find a small door in front of you. This is the secret door to the labyrinth. The key will open it. If you turn left at the bottom of the stairs, you'll find another passage which leads outside the palace walls. That's how Minos leaves the palace secretly when he needs to. It's also how you and Theseus can leave later tonight.
Does Theseus know that I'm coming to help him?
No, there was no way to send him a message safely. The servants were on their way to take him to the labyrinth when I left you. It was too late. You must explain everything when you find him. Go now, Ariadne. Theseus is in great danger. It will not take the monster long to find him.
Just then, I remembered something important. Daedalus, I said, before I go, I'll quickly write a message for my father and leave it in his room. I'll tell him that I found the secret passage myself when I was playing in his rooms as a child. You could die if my father thinks that you've helped me.
Thank you, Ariadne,
said Daedalus.
but don't worry about me. I'm not afraid of your father. Go now and be brave. I know that the gods are with you and Theseus. When you arrive at the harbour, look for a boat with a black sail. It will be ready for your journey. The black sail will be hard for your father's boats to follow in the dark. Go with the gods.
My good old friend turned and walked away from me. Not long after that, I was in my father's bedroom. Daedalus was right. I lifted up the stone door in the floor next to the bed quite easily. I quickly wrote the message to my father and left it on his desk. Then I went down the stairs into the dark. I found the key at the bottom of the stairs and I turned right. Before long, I came to a small locked door. I opened it with the key in my hand. Then I put my lamp down and I tied the thread to the door handle. After that, I opened the door quietly and listened. At first, I could hear nothing at all. It was very cold and dark. But I knew it was time to go into the labyrinth. I had to walk away from the door with my gold thread in one hand and my lamp in the other hand. I had to be a brave daughter of Minos. Chapter 4. Into the Labyrinth. I was afraid that my little lamp would suddenly go out and that I would lose myself in the dark. But I knew that I was not alone. Theseus was there somewhere in the labyrinth with me. I turned right and then left and then right again, and I always left some of the gold thread behind me as I went deeper and deeper into the labyrinth. Suddenly, I heard a small noise in front of me. Someone or something was moving towards me. It was still outside the small circle of light that came from my lamp. Who or what was it? "Theseus?" I whispered. "I've come to help. I'm a friend." At first, there was no answer. Perhaps it was the Minotaur. Then I heard Theseus's voice.
Are you alive? Or are you a ghost? Or a goddess?
"I'm Ariadne, the daughter of Minos," I answered. I lifted the light to show my face. He came nearer.
Yes. I remember your face from the bullfight. You were sitting near your father. It's not a face that a man can easily forget.
"This is no time for compliments," I replied angrily. Are you forgetting the Minotaur? Take this sword which I've brought for you. I took it out from under my cloak and offered it to him. He looked at me and said,
Why is the daughter of King Minos helping me? Is this a good sword or some kind of trick?
This is no trick, I answered. I need to leave Crete. Can you sail to Naxos?
Yes,
He answered.
if you can help me to leave the labyrinth and to rescue my friends.
If you help me to get to Naxos without asking why, I'll help you and your friends, I said. Do you agree? Suddenly, we heard a terrible roaring behind Theseus.
I agree, Princess.
Said Theseus. He took the sword from my hand and turned to face the noise. Take this too, I said. I put the ball of gold thread into his hand. When you've killed the monster, follow the thread back to me and then we'll leave the labyrinth together. The roaring was getting louder all the time. I left Theseus and ran back along the way that was shown by the gold thread to the secret door. The fight between Theseus and the Minotaur went on for a long time. It was like an earthquake. In the end, the roaring stopped, and Theseus came to me along the way shown by the gold thread. He was very tired. All he said was,
Shall we go now, Princess?
I took his hand. We went out through the small door and walked back up the passage to the bottom of the stairs. And then we saw her. Phaedra was sitting on the bottom stair.
Where are you going, Ariadne?
She asked. And she smiled a big smile at Theseus.
Can I come too?
Phaedra, how did you get here? I said.
Well, you went to your room to put on your cloak. You don't usually wear that heavy cloak in summertime. I thought it was strange, and so I followed you. But tell me, sister, why was the Minotaur roaring so loudly?
I tried to talk to her in a friendly way. Phaedra, I said, Theseus and I are leaving Crete. Phaedra looked at Theseus.
I can understand why Theseus is leaving, but why do you have to go with him? Do you love him?
Of course not. You don't understand anything, I shouted. Suddenly she started to cry.
If you try to go now without me, I'll scream, and somebody will come and they'll stop you.
She started to climb up the stairs. Theseus caught her feet and took her in his arms.
Can't she come with us?
He asked me. But she's so young, I started.
So were you once, Princess.
Said Theseus. I didn't like the way that he called me Princess. Phaedra just lay in his arms and smiled up at him. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above us in my father's room. Quick, I whispered. Bring Phaedra. This passage leads outside the palace walls.
This is so exciting,
whispered Phaedra.
Shh, little princess,
said Theseus quietly. Phaedra looked at him with eyes as big as dinner plates. In a very short time, we reached the bottom of some more stairs. I went up first, and Theseus followed, with Phaedra in his arms. When we came out into the warm night, I looked around. This way to the bullring, I said. And so we ran to the cage under the bullring. There the guards were sitting asleep around the table in their guardroom. There was an empty bottle of drink and some half-empty drinking cups on the table. I didn't want my footsteps to wake them, so I took my shoes off and walked barefoot to take a big key from the hand of one of the guards. Suddenly, the man cried out,
Stop, thief!
For one terrible moment, I thought that our escape was over. But then he went on to laugh in his sleep and said,
So you've taken my drink, have you?
He took his drinking cup in his hand and went into a deep sleep once more. As quietly as I could, I walked out of the guardroom, put the key into the lock of the cage door and opened it. Theseus's friends kissed my hand in thanks as they came out. After that, Phaedra and I, followed by Theseus and his friends from Athens, ran barefoot through the night to the sea. Chapter 5. Leaving Crete. As we ran towards the harbour, we heard a lot of noise behind us. Lights came on all over the palace. Everyone was awake there because of the unusual roaring of the Minotaur in the labyrinth below them. We ran as fast as we could. I ran faster because Theseus was carrying Phaedra in his arms. Theseus's friends ran behind us. When we arrived at the harbour, I looked at all the boats. It was difficult to see the colour of their sails in the dark, but, in the end, I saw a sail that was a little darker than the others. I climbed onto that boat. "This way!" I shouted to Theseus.
This way!
Shouted Theseus to his friends. Suddenly, I saw moving lights on the hill. "Hurry, Theseus!" I shouted. "They're coming after us!" Theseus jumped into the boat. His friends followed.
Untie the boat!
He called to one of his friends, putting Phaedra down in the boat.
Luckily, there's some wind to take us out to sea. But it's a strange, hot wind for this time of year.
The lights were getting close to the harbour. "This is no time to talk about the weather," I said.
From now on,
Said Theseus.
the weather is the most important thing for us. You'll have to learn that.
The wind found our black sail, and we started to move slowly out of the harbour. "Can't we go any faster?" I shouted to the Athenians as a group of Cretan men arrived at the harbour. They were palace servants, some of my father's fastest runners. They started to look at all the boats.
They haven't seen us yet.
Said Theseus, watching them.
This black sail was a good idea, Princess.
"Thank you for the compliment, but it really wasn't my idea," I started to explain. But I couldn't finish. Suddenly, all the cats and dogs in the streets near the harbour started to howl. It was a terrible noise. Phaedra screamed. My father's men now saw us in the harbour. Some of them jumped into the water and started to swim towards us. But they didn't get far. There was a big roar from under the ground. The little houses round the harbour started to move. Some palace servants fell into the sea from the harbour wall. Then, a big wave picked up our boat and carried us out of the harbour. Suddenly, we were moving very fast away from the land.
An earthquake!
Shouted Theseus.
Don't worry. My father Poseidon, the god of the sea, will look after us.
I found Phaedra's hand and held it strongly. Theseus took my other hand. The other Athenians quickly took down the sail and held on to the sides of our boat as it ran out to sea. I don't know how long we travelled on that wave. Then suddenly, everything was quiet. The wave dropped our boat and moved on. The wind stopped. We were a long way from land, but we could still hear screams and shouts for help coming from our island home. I smelled smoke.
Ariadne! Look!
Shouted Phaedra. She was looking at our palace, but it wasn't there anymore. There was just a great ball of fire at the top of the hill. The flames jumped high into the night sky.
What about Icarus?
Screamed Phaedra.
And Daedalus? And Mother and Father?
Daedalus is an inventor. He'll have something ready that will save them, I said.
But many people on the island will die,
said Theseus.
The gods are angry with Crete. This is a terrible earthquake. I've never seen a bigger one.
For once he was not smiling. Phaedra started to cry.
There's nothing that we can do to save them, I'm afraid, little princess,
said Theseus kindly.
The game isn't so funny anymore, is it? The best thing that you can do is to sleep a little. I know how tired you must be. Lie down here.
And he made a bed for Phaedra with his cloak. Phaedra obeyed him, and she soon fell asleep. I was surprised. She never obeyed me. But Theseus and his friends were too busy to sleep. They started to put up the sail on our boat once more. They were happily thinking of going back home to Athens. I was sadly watching my home country in terrible trouble. There were fires everywhere, not only at the palace. I could see big waves around the island too. They were washing away poor people's houses near the sea. We were far away now, but I could still hear the screams that were brought to me by the wind. What have we done to make the gods so angry? I cried. Is this because Theseus has killed the Minotaur, or because my father did not give Theseus what he asked for? Theseus said nothing, but he came over and stood by my side. When the sun came up, a soft, cool wind started. Our boat moved on away from Crete until we could no longer see land. Phaedra woke up.
I'm hungry,
she said.
That's funny,
said Theseus.
So am I. Luckily, my men have found some bread, chicken, and fruit here in the boat, and some bottles of water. Your clever sister has thought of everything.
I was too tired to explain about Daedalus. Theseus looked into my face.
You need to sleep, Ariadne,
he said.
Lie down under my cloak, and I'll look after Phaedra.
I was too tired to argue. I lay down in the bottom of the boat and fell asleep. Chapter 6. On the Boat. When I woke up again, it was late afternoon. The boat was sailing towards the north. Theseus's friends were looking after it, and Theseus and Phaedra were sitting at the back. They were talking together quietly. Phaedra laughed at something Theseus said, and then she saw me.
You've been asleep a long time,
she said.
Your sister was very tired,
said Theseus.
Would you like something to eat, Ariadne?
Where are we? I asked, while I ate and drank.
We're sailing towards Callisti,
he answered.
But we're only about halfway there. Luckily, we've got enough food and water for a few days. And the wind is good for us.
I thought about my maps. Naxos was north of Callisti. I was on my way to Immerse. Thank you for looking after Phaedra, I said to Theseus. He gave me more bread, chicken and water.
Eat as much as you like,
he said.
There are shops in Callisti where we can buy more food.
But we haven't any money, have we?
Said Phaedra. I'm still wearing my gold rings and necklaces, I told her. We can sell them for money.
And I hid some money in a secret pocket in my cloak when I arrived in Crete,
said Theseus.
We have enough to pay for everything we need.
I hope that we're not taking you and your friends too far from Athens, I said. You've been in Crete a long time.
Yes,
he said.
I'm afraid that my father, King Aegeus, thinks that I'm dead. But Naxos is on the way to Athens. I can sail home quickly from there.
But you said that your father was Poseidon, the god of the sea, didn't you?
Said Phaedra suddenly.
You remember everything, don't you?
Said Theseus.
So, how can you have two fathers at the same time?
Asked Phaedra.
Well, if you like, you can say that I have one father in this world and one father in the world after death. My father in the world after death is Poseidon. My father in this world is Aegeus, the king of Athens. He's waiting for me to come back from Crete and to rule our kingdom after he dies. That's why I must go home quickly. I don't want him to think that I'm dead. It could break his heart.
Then why don't we go to Athens now?
Asked Phaedra.
Ask Ariadne.
Said Theseus.
She wants to go to Naxos.
I'll tell you when we arrive, I answered. I didn't want to share any more of my secrets with Phaedra, and I wasn't sure about Inerus's last message. Perhaps it wasn't really from him, or perhaps he wasn't on Naxos any longer. But I secretly clung to the idea of seeing him soon. When Theseus slept, we helped the other Athenians to look after the boat. There was a soft, cool wind, so we didn't find it difficult. When Theseus woke up, we slept. The next day at breakfast, Theseus looked at the sail.
I must remember to change that before I get back to Athens,
He said.
I told my father that I'd come home as soon as I could, but I said that a black sail would mean bad news, my death. I never thought that a black sail could be useful in a different way, like this one has been for us.
Then Theseus looked at me strangely.
Where will you go after Naxos?
He asked. Oh, I don't know, I answered.
What a beautiful, secretive princess you are,
Said Theseus. What Phaedra and I do next is nothing to do with you, I said coldly.
I'm sorry to hear that,
Said Theseus.
I thought that you could both come with me to Athens. I know that my father would be happy to meet the daughters of King Minos.
That's a good idea.
Cried Phaedra.
Let's go to Athens.
It's the first place that they'll look for us, I said. They'll know by now that we left with Theseus,
It will be hard to hide from King Minos forever.
said Theseus quietly. He looked tense and angry. Did he really think that I wanted to be with him? Don't worry about us, I said. We'll be fine. But I had no plan if we didn't find Inerus on Naxos. I looked out over the sea. Please be there, Inerus, I thought. I fell asleep again in the hot afternoon sun. But I woke up suddenly when Phaedra shouted,
I can see land.
It was Callisti. Theseus took the boat into the harbour. There we bought some food and more water. Theseus wanted to stay in Callisti for a while, where he knew some people, but I didn't want to wait. We must get to Naxos as soon as we can, I said.
I can't understand you,
He said.
Naxos isn't a very interesting island.
You made a promise, I shouted. Have you forgotten the labyrinth so quickly? His face went white.
Get into the boat, now!
He shouted to Phaedra, who was playing on the harbour wall, and he called to his friends.
Move it! We're leaving, at once!
Why are you so cross with me?
Howled Phaedra.
I'm not!
He said. I knew that he was cross with me. We sailed on without Theseus saying another word. It wasn't a very comfortable journey. We all felt tense. At last, we saw a big, new island in front of us,
Ariadne, this is Naxos.
said Theseus. Chapter 7. Arriving on Naxos. The harbour on Naxos was busy when we arrived. Theseus said to us,
I'm going with my friends to buy a new white sail for the boat. Why don't you two look around the town? I'll meet you back here at midday. Then perhaps you can explain your mystery, Ariadne. I'm not going to leave you here until I know that you're safe.
I agreed. I wanted to get away quickly. I walked through the busy streets with Phaedra behind me.
Wait for me!
She shouted,
Where are we going?
We must find the temple of Dionysus, I said. I knew that this was the best place to look for Immerse. His father had many friends who were priests of Dionysus on other islands.
Why?
Shouted Phaedra as I pushed through the crowds. I had to tell her. I'm looking for Immerse, I shouted back. Hurry up, Phaedra,
Immerse?
she answered.
Is he here?
I hope so, I said. He sent me a message from Naxos and asked me to come here. Phaedra put her hand on my arm.
You love him, don't you?
She asked. I've always loved him, I said. But I didn't know how much until Father sent him away. I couldn't stay in Crete after he left. Phaedra nodded like a little old lady.
I know what you mean.
She said.
Because I love Theseus.
Oh, come on, Phaedra, I said. You're too young to understand about love between a man and a woman.
I know that I'm young,
She said.
but I love him.
Well, I said, we haven't got time to talk about it now. Let's go and find Immerse,
All right.
she said, happy again. When we arrived at the temple, I looked around. There were a few priests, but I couldn't see Immerse. Then I saw a small garden beside the temple. Someone was sitting there alone, under an orange tree. Phaedra! He's here! I said. I was so happy that I just stood and looked at him. But Phaedra ran towards him.
Immerse! We're here!
She shouted. He turned around and saw me. His sudden smile was like the sun in the morning. I ran into his arms.
Ariadne, how did you get away so quickly? What about Minos? Are you all right?
He asked. We're fine, I said. Somebody brought us here.
It's so wonderful to see you. And you too, Phaedra.
He laughed as she started to pull his hand. There's so much to tell you, I said to him. Is there somewhere we can go to talk? Immerse nodded.
I'm staying with an old priest who lives near here,
He said.
Let's go and talk at his house.
A short time later, he knew everything. He listened quietly when I told him of our escape.
So the palace has burnt down,
He said.
What about your parents, my father, Daedalus and Icarus?
We don't know, I said. But the earthquake and the fire mean that nobody followed our boat,
But they will come for you,
said Immerse.
one day.
Let's not talk about that now.
Said Phaedra.
Sister, Theseus is waiting for us at the harbour.
I saw that Phaedra was right. It was time to go,
I'd like to meet him too.
said Immerse.
Shall we go and find him now?
Yes, come on, hurry.
Said Phaedra. She ran down the hill towards the harbour. Immerse and I followed her, hand in hand. The streets were still busy, so we arrived at the harbour a little late. Theseus was looking for us angrily. Phaedra ran up to him.
Here we are,
She said happily. Theseus looked over her head and saw me with Innerus. His face changed. Suddenly, he looked more unhappy than angry. Innerus walked straight up to him and bowed politely.
Prince Theseus,
He said,
I'm very happy to meet you. My name is Innerus, and I've known Ariadne and Phaedra for many years. I want to thank you for bringing them to me.
He smiled at Theseus.
Ariadne means the world to me, and she always has done. I'll look after her and Phaedra from now on.
So this is your mystery, Princess.
Said Theseus.
You're certainly a secretive young woman.
You must be hungry and tired after your journey.
Said Innerus.
Would you and your Athenian friends like to eat with us at the temple before you leave? Ariadne has told me that you need to sail to Athens before long.
Very well.
Said Theseus. I could see that it was difficult for him to say no to Innerus.
I'll tell the priests that we have a most important visitor.
Said Innerus.
You'll soon be famous in Naxos, Theseus, for killing the terrible Minotaur.
Phaedra's eyes opened wide.
Are you going to be famous?
She asked Theseus.
In Athens, I'm famous already.
He answered.
Can I come to Athens with you?
Asked Phaedra. Phaedra, I said. Just be quiet for once,
It's all right.
said Theseus.
Princess Phaedra will be welcome in Athens one day.
So together with Theseus and the other Athenians, we left the harbour and went to eat with the priests. They gave us all a wonderful meal and then somewhere to sleep. Innerus didn't tell the priests that Phaedra and I were princesses from Crete. He just said that we were friends. But the priests knew who Theseus was, and they were a little afraid of him as the son of King Aegeus. I understood that he was a very important prince in that part of the world. Theseus said that he wanted to leave early the next morning, so we agreed to say goodbye at the harbour as soon as the sun came up. When we got up, Phaedra was unusually quiet. "What is it?" I asked her as we dressed in our room.
I want to go to Athens with Theseus.
She said.
You don't want me to stay here with you and Innerus, do you?
Well, of course I thought that you would want to stay with us,
Well, I don't.
said my strange little sister.
I want to go with Theseus, and then I want to go home again to see Mother and Father. You don't want to see them, do you?
Phaedra, I said, I love Innerus, but Father will never allow me to marry him because he's not a prince. What can I do?
You can stay here with him,
Said Phaedra.
I won't tell anyone.
It's a big secret, I said to her. Can you keep it?
If you allow me to go with Theseus, I'll keep it.
She said. I could see that she meant it. She was also right. I could never see my parents again. I had to disappear. We must talk to Theseus and Innerus about this, I said. We must all agree. There are 4 people in this secret, and perhaps Theseus won't agree. When we left our room, Innerus was waiting.
Theseus is already at the harbour,
He said.
He left some time ago.
On the way to the harbour, we told Innerus about Phaedra's idea. Innerus looked at me carefully.
Do you understand what this means, Ariadne? You won't be a princess anymore, and you'll never see Crete or your family again. I can't ask you to do this for me.
I looked at the women in the street so early in the morning. Some were going to the harbour to say goodbye to their husbands who, it was clear, went fishing every day. Others were going to buy fish from the early morning boats. Some were already cleaning their houses in the early light. They were talking together or singing as they worked. "Look at those women. They aren't unhappy," I said to Innerus. "They're busy, but in a strange way they're free. I've never been free." We arrived at the harbour. Theseus was cleaning the boat. His Athenian friends were helping him.
We'll soon be going on our way to Athens,
He said.
Have you got room for me on the boat?
Asked Phaedra.
What?
Said Theseus. Innerus and I explained our plan to him.
You know what people will say, Ariadne.
He said.
They'll say that you sailed away with me because you loved me. Then they'll say that I left you here because I didn't love you. What do you think of that?
People can think what they like, Theseus, I said. I have my Innerus. That's the only important thing. He didn't like what I said.
Right then, Phaedra.
He said.
It's time to go.
Phaedra jumped into the boat and clung to Theseus's arm.
Goodbye, Ariadne! Goodbye, Innerus! Be happy!
She shouted. Good luck to you both, I shouted back. Chapter 8. Sophia's Life. On that morning so long ago, Theseus sailed away quickly. He never looked back. But Phaedra waved at us for as long as she could see us. Innerus and I stood and watched the boat. We could easily see the black sail against the blue sky. Suddenly I remembered. The black sail, I cried. Theseus wanted to change it before he left. I told Innerus why. Soon after that, a man arrived at the harbour with a new white sail.
Where's the prince from Athens?
He asked everybody. He's gone, I said. Theseus's boat was disappearing fast beyond the horizon. I pointed to it. That's his boat. You can just see the black sail.
But he asked me to make this new sail,
said the man.
and he hasn't paid me for it.
He looked very angry. How much is it? I asked the man. Can I pay you with this gold necklace? I untied my necklace and took it from my neck to show it to him.
That's solid gold, isn't it?
He said. I nodded.
Then it's too much for one sail.
He went on. Then give me a small boat too, I said. Innerus looked worried, but I explained. We don't need gold here, but perhaps we'll need a boat for fishing. I smiled at the man. Is that all right?
Oh, yes.
He answered.
Come with me.
Innerus and I followed the man to his shop. Innerus and I were married in the temple of Dionysus, a week after Theseus and Phaedra left. I changed my name to Sophia. That means wise one in Greek. I was sure that I was wise to choose a life with Innerus and to leave my old life behind me. I had to follow my heart. Nobody in Naxos ever knew who I really was. About a month after we married, a boat came from Crete. They were looking for me and Phaedra. Someone told them that Theseus was on the way to Athens with some Athenian friends. No one recognized me in my ordinary clothes. The Cretans left for Athens. I didn't know what Theseus and Phaedra would say to them there, but I knew that they wouldn't tell the truth about me and Innerus. After a year, people stopped asking questions about Princess Ariadne. She just disappeared, became a ghost. But Sophia was alive and safe, and soon she was pregnant. Her baby, when it came, was a beautiful boy. She called him Orestes. That means mountain. Orestes grew to be tall and handsome like his father. 2 years later, Sophia became pregnant again. This time she had a girl. She called her second child Artemisia. That means moon. Artemisia was a wild child who often ran barefoot into the fields to play with the animals. Some people on Naxos pointed their fingers at me and said that I was a bad mother because I allowed my daughter to be too free. But I wanted my children to be happy when they were young. I don't think that they ever had a teacher as good as Daedalus was to me, but Inarus and I taught them many things that you can't learn at school. We taught them that money isn't as important as freedom, and that shared love is more important than anything. When Artemisia told me that she wanted to be like a princess in one of the old stories, I asked her if she thought that princesses were happy. She said,
"I'm not sure."
I told her, I don't think that kings and queens and princes and princesses have time to be happy. She thought hard. For a minute, she almost looked like Phaedra when I last saw her in the harbour with Theseus.
"But I would like some servants,"
she said. Not much news reaches Naxos from other countries beyond the islands around us. But one day, not long after Theseus left, we learnt that he was now king of Athens. When we heard about the death of his father Aegeus, I was very sorry. As soon as he saw the black sail on Theseus's boat, he jumped from a mountain near Athens into the sea, now called the Aegean, after him. What a terrible thing to happen on the day that Theseus reached his homeland. Some time later, I heard that Theseus was now married to a tall, strong woman, Queen Hippolyta, and that they had a son, Hippolytus. Then, after some years, more news reached us from Athens. Hippolyta was dead, and Theseus had a new wife, a beautiful young princess from Crete. I understood then that Phaedra must be Theseus's new wife. I remembered her words to me that morning in Naxos so many years earlier.
I love him.
I was surprised because he was so much older than her, but I hoped they would be happy together. Sadly, last year, the news came that Phaedra was dead. People said that she and Theseus argued, often about Hippolytus, and in the end she killed herself. I saw her ghost in my dreams just before the news came. My poor little sister. She deserved a better life. My life as Sophia, after 20 years on Naxos, is a happy one. And I'm happy for my children too. Their lives will certainly be much easier than Phaedra's. Orestes already loves a girl here in Naxos, and I think that they will marry soon. Lots of boys like Artemisia, but she hasn't fallen in love with any of them yet. When she's ready, she can decide who to marry, and Inarus and I won't stop her. I sometimes think about Theseus. Has his life been happy? He has clearly ruled his kingdom well. Athens is now famous. After the earthquake, Crete became weak, and Athens is now much stronger than my homeland. Perhaps Theseus learned some lessons from his time in Crete. He saw how my father ruled his kingdom, and he decided not to make the same mistakes. But I don't forget the good things. He brought me safely here to Naxos, and he's kept his promise. So I ask the goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, to look after him when I go to the temple. He deserves their help. Theseus and I will never meet again, but I haven't forgotten him, and I feel sure that he hasn't forgotten me.